The text message came through just as Zara Johnson was locking up the vintage bookstore where she worked, and her hands started trembling the moment she saw his name on the screen. "We need to talk. I'm outside your apartment. Don't make this difficult. Marcus." Her ex-boyfriend of 3 months who still couldn't grasp the meaning of the word over. She'd blocked his number twice, changed her routine, even started parking in different spots around her building. Nothing worked. He always found a way back, always had some excuse about needing closure or wanting to explain himself one more time. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Marcus didn't like losing, and he saw Zara as something he'd lost. She stood on the sidewalk outside Hemingway's corner, the bookstore that had been her sanctuary for the past 2 years, and tried to steady her breathing. Her boss had already left for the evening, and the street was quieter than usual for a Thursday night. The autumn air carried a chill that made her pull her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "Everything all right?" The voice came from her left, deep and concerned. Zara turned to find a man stepping out of a sleek black car she hadn't noticed parked at the curb. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that looked professionally styled but slightly mussed, as though he'd been running his hands through it. He wore an expensive-looking charcoal suit with the jacket unbuttoned, and his eyes were an unusual shade of gray that seemed to catch the streetlight. "I'm fine," Zara said automatically, the lie she'd perfected over the past few months. "Just heading home." "You don't look fine." He moved closer, his expression serious. "You look scared." Something about his directness cut through her usual defenses. Maybe it was the exhaustion of dealing with Marcus alone for so long, or maybe it was the genuine concern in this stranger's eyes, but Zara found herself telling the truth. "My ex won't leave me alone. He's waiting at my apartment right now and I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "I've asked him to stop. I've blocked him. Nothing works." The man's jaw tightened and something shifted in his demeanor. He went from concerned stranger to someone who looked like he was used to solving problems, the kind of problems that required immediate action. "I'll handle your ex," he said quietly, and the way he said it made her finally feel safe. The words weren't aggressive or boastful. They were a simple statement of fact, delivered with the kind of calm certainty that made Zara believe him completely. For the first time in months, she felt the knot of anxiety in her chest begin to loosen. "You don't have to do that," Zara said, even as relief flooded through her. "I don't even know you. Vincent Voss." He extended his hand and she shook it, noting the firm grip and the warmth of his palm against hers. "And you're right, you don't know me, but I know what it's like to feel unsafe and I know how to handle men who don't understand boundaries." "Let me help you." Zara Johnson. She hesitated, years of being told not to accept help from strangers warring with her desperate need for exactly that. "Are you sure? He can be intense." "I'm sure." Vincent pulled out his phone. "What's your address?" "I'll drive you home and make certain he understands that you want to be left alone. If he refuses to leave, we'll call the police and document everything. Either way, this ends tonight." Zara gave him her address, and within minutes, they were driving through the city in his Mercedes. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive and subtle, probably his cologne. The seats were heated, and classical music played softly from hidden speakers. "This is a really nice car," Zara said, suddenly aware that she was alone with a complete stranger. But somehow she still felt safer than she had in months. "Thank you, I have a weakness for German engineering." Vincent glanced at her. "Tell me about Marcus. How long were you together?" 8 months. We broke up 3 months ago." Zara stared out the window at the passing streetlights. "He seemed great at first, attentive, romantic, interested in my life. But then he started getting possessive, Checking my phone, showing up at the bookstore unannounced, getting angry when I made plans with friends. I tried to end it nicely, but he won't accept it. Has he hurt you? Vincent's voice was carefully neutral, but his hands tightened on the steering wheel. Not physically. But he's made me feel trapped and scared, which is its own kind of hurt. Zara turned to look at Vincent's profile. What do you do, Vincent Voss? You seem like someone who's used to taking charge. I run a company, real estate development and investment. He said it casually, but something in his tone suggested it was more significant than he was letting on. I spend a lot of time solving problems and dealing with difficult people. Your ex doesn't intimidate me. They pulled up to Zara's apartment building, a modest 3-story walk-up in a decent neighborhood. She could see Marcus immediately, leaning against the brick wall near the entrance, his phone in his hand. He looked up as the Mercedes parked, his expression shifting from impatience to confusion to anger as he watched Zara step out of the passenger side. Who the hell is this? Marcus pushed off the wall, his 6-foot frame suddenly seeming threatening in the dim light. He was handsome in a conventional way, with blonde hair and blue eyes, but Zara wondered how she'd ever found him attractive. All she saw now was the cruel set of his mouth and the way his hands clenched into fists. Vincent was out of the car in a smooth motion, positioning himself slightly in front of Zara. He was at least 2 inches taller than Marcus and broader in the shoulders, but it wasn't his size that made Marcus take a step back. It was the absolute authority in his stance, the way he commanded the space around him without raising his voice or making a single aggressive move. I'm someone who's here to deliver a message, Vincent said, his tone conversational but with an edge of steel underneath. Zara has asked you multiple times to leave her alone. You're going to respect that request starting right now. This is none of your business, Marcus spat, trying to look around Vincent to glare at Zara. We have history. This is between us. You made it my business when you decided to harass her. Vincent pulled out his phone and held it up. I'm recording this conversation. You're currently waiting outside her apartment despite being asked to stay away. That's stalking. I'm giving you one chance to leave peacefully and never contact Zara again. If you refuse, I'll call the police right now and press charges on her behalf. You can't do that, Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. I absolutely can, and I will. Vincent took a step forward. But more than that, I'll make it my personal mission to ensure you face consequences for your behavior. I have resources you can't imagine and lawyers who would love a case this straightforward. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave, delete Zara's contact information, and never come near her or this building again. If I find out you've contacted her in any way, texted her, emailed her, shown up at her work, anything, I will destroy your life. Do you understand me? The quiet intensity in Vincent's voice was more frightening than any shouting could have been. Zara watched Marcus's face cycle through several emotions before landing on something close to fear. This is insane, Marcus muttered, but he was already backing away. You're insane. I'm protective, Vincent corrected. There's a difference. Now leave. Marcus looked at Zara one more time, and she met his gaze steadily, no longer afraid. With Vincent beside her, she felt like she could breathe again. Marcus turned and walked quickly down the street, getting into a silver sedan parked at the corner and driving away with more speed than was probably legal. Vincent watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner, then lowered his phone. That was easier than I expected. Zara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Thank you. I can't believe you did that. I've been dealing with him alone for so long, and you just made him leave in 5 minutes. Bullies respond to strength and consequences. He thought he could intimidate you because you were alone and scared. Now he knows you're not alone and there will be consequences if he continues. Vincent turned to face her fully. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm free. Zara felt tears prickling at her eyes, but they were tears of relief. I don't know how to thank you. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. The words came out smoothly, but Zara caught the hint of nervousness underneath them. I'd like to make sure you're doing all right, and I'd enjoy getting to know you better under circumstances that don't involve your ex. Zara knew she should probably say no. She'd just gotten out of a bad relationship, and she didn't know anything about this man, except that he drove a nice car and had intimidated Marcus into leaving. But there was something about Vincent that drew her in, a combination of strength and gentleness that made her want to know more. Okay, she said. Dinner sounds good. Vincent's face broke into a genuine smile, and Zara realized he was even more attractive when he wasn't in problem-solving mode. I'll pick you up at 7. And Zara, if Marcus contacts you between now and then, call me immediately. He handed her a business card with his personal number written on the back. I meant what I said about protecting you. She took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. I will. Thank you again, Vincent. He waited until she was safely inside the building before returning to his car. Zara climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment, unlocked the door, and leaned against it once she was inside, finally allowing herself to process everything that had just happened. She looked down at the business card in her hand. Vincent Voss, CEO, Voss Enterprises. She pulled out her phone and searched the name, then felt her eyes widen as the results loaded. Voss Enterprises wasn't just a real estate company. It was one of the largest private development firms in the country, with projects spanning 3 continents. Vincent Voss wasn't just successful. He was a billionaire, and he'd asked her to dinner. Zara set her phone down and walked to her bedroom, suddenly aware of how small and shabby her apartment must have seemed to someone like Vincent. Her second-hand furniture and walls lined with overflowing bookshelves were a far cry from the world he clearly inhabited. But he'd looked at her with genuine interest, had helped her without hesitation, had asked her out like she was someone worth spending time with. She spent the next day at work in a daze, restocking shelves and helping customers while her mind kept returning to Vincent. Her coworker and friend, Emma, noticed immediately. You've been smiling at that pile of mystery novels for 5 minutes, Emma said, hip-checking Zara gently. What's going on? Zara told her everything, watching Emma's eyes grow wider with each detail. Let me get this straight, Emma said when she finished. A billionaire CEO literally rescued you from your stalker ex and then asked you to dinner. When you say it like that, it sounds like a fantasy, Zara admitted. Because it is. This is literally the plot of every romance novel we sell. Emma grabbed Zara's shoulders. You're living in a book right now. Please tell me you're going to wear something amazing tonight. I don't own anything amazing. I work in a bookstore. Then we're going shopping on your lunch break. No arguments. 3 hours later, Zara had a new dress hanging in her closet, a deep blue wrap style that Emma had insisted brought out her eyes. She'd also bought new shoes, simple black heels that made her legs look longer. It had cost more than she usually spent on clothes in 6 months, but Emma had convinced her it was an investment. You're not just going to dinner, Emma had said. You're starting a new chapter. You deserve to feel beautiful. Now, standing in front of her bathroom mirror at 6:30, Zara had to admit Emma had been right. The dress fit perfectly, skimming her curves without being too tight. She'd left her dark hair down in loose waves and kept her makeup simple but polished. She looked like a different person from the scared woman who'd been standing outside the bookstore yesterday. Vincent arrived exactly at 7, looking devastating in dark jeans and a black sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He held a single white rose which he offered to her with a smile that made her heart skip. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe him. "Thank you. You look pretty good yourself." Zara took the rose, inhaling its delicate scent. "Should I be worried that you know where I live, but I didn't give you my apartment number?" I asked the woman leaving the building which unit was yours. She seemed to think I was charming. Vincent's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Though I probably should have led with that instead of making it sound creepy." Zara laughed, feeling the last of her nervousness ease. "Where are we going?" "There's a restaurant downtown I think you'll like. It's quiet, the food is excellent, and we can actually talk without shouting over noise." He offered his arm and she took it, locking her door behind her. The restaurant was called Marcella's, an Italian place tucked into a historic building with exposed brick walls and soft lighting. The hostess greeted Vincent by name and led them to a corner booth that offered privacy without feeling isolated. Zara noticed several people turning to look as they passed, and she wondered if they recognized Vincent or were simply drawn to his presence the way she had been. "Do you come here often?" Zara asked as they settled into their seats. "A few times a month. The owner is a friend and she's passionate about good food." Vincent accepted a menu from the hostess, "But I wanted to bring you here specifically because it's comfortable. I thought you might appreciate somewhere low-key after everything you've been through." It was such a thoughtful gesture that Zara felt a warmth spreading through her chest. "You were right. This is perfect." They ordered wine and appetizers, and Vincent asked about her work at the bookstore. Zara found herself telling him about her love of literature, how she'd studied English in college, but had never quite figured out what to do with the degree, until she'd stumbled into Hemingway's corner and found her place among the shelves. "I know it's not glamorous," she said, tearing off a piece of bread, "but I love being around books. I love matching readers with stories I think they'll enjoy. It feels meaningful in a small way." "There's nothing small about that," Vincent said firmly. "You're preserving something important." In a world that's becoming increasingly digital and disconnected, physical bookstores are places where people can still discover unexpected things. You're part of that. You sound like you've given this some thought. "I have. I'm trying to buy the building where your bookstore is located, actually." Vincent leaned back, watching her reaction. "The owner wants to sell, but I've been researching the tenants before I make an offer. I don't want to be the kind of developer who kicks out established businesses for higher-paying chains." Hemingway's corner kept coming up as a neighborhood anchor, somewhere people genuinely care about. Zara felt a flutter of worry. "Are you going to raise the rent?" "I'm going to offer your boss a longer lease at the current rate, with modest increases tied to inflation rather than market rates. The building needs some renovation, but that's my investment to make." Vincent reached across the table and took her hand. "I promise I'm not going to destroy the thing that makes you happy." "You really are different from anyone I've met before," Zara said softly, very aware of his hand wrapped around hers. "I hope that's a good thing." "It's a very good thing." Their entrees arrived, and the conversation flowed naturally from topic to topic. Vincent told her about growing up in Chicago, the son of a construction worker who taught him the value of building things that lasted. He'd put himself through business school, started with a single property renovation, and built his company from there over the course of 10 years. "I've been lucky," he said, twirling pasta on his fork. "But I've also worked harder than most people can imagine. There were years where I slept 4 hours a night and lived on coffee and ambition. Now that I'm successful, I try to remember what it was like to struggle. It keeps me grounded." "Is that why you helped me yesterday? Because you remember what it's like to feel powerless?" Vincent set down his fork and looked at her directly. I helped you because the thought of someone making you feel unsafe made me angry. And because from the moment I saw you standing there looking scared, I wanted to make it better. I know that sounds intense for having just met you, but I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Zara's breath caught. That doesn't sound intense. That sounds honest, and I appreciate honesty. Then, honestly, I'd like to see you again after tonight, and again after that if you'll let me. Vincent's gray eyes held hers. I know the timing isn't ideal. You just got out of a bad relationship, and I'm probably the last thing you need right now. But I'm asking anyway because I think we could have something real. I think so too, Zara said, and she meant it. There was something about Vincent that felt right in a way nothing with Marcus ever had. But I need you to understand that I'm still recovering. I'm still learning to trust my own judgment again. I understand, and I'm patient. Vincent squeezed her hand gently. We'll go at whatever pace you need. I just want the chance to show you how you deserve to be treated. They stayed at the restaurant until closing, talking over coffee and sharing a dessert. Vincent told her funny stories about disastrous business meetings and eccentric clients, making her laugh so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. Zara found herself telling him about her family, her parents who lived upstate and worried about her constantly, her younger brother who was in medical school. They'd like you, she said as they finally stood to leave. My mom has been worried about me ever since the Marcus situation. She'd be relieved to know I met someone who actually cares about my safety. I'd like to meet them someday, if that's not too forward to say. It's forward, but I like it. Vincent drove her home, and this time when they pulled up to her building, there was no sign of Marcus. Vincent walked her to her door anyway, his hand warm on the small of her back. Thank you for tonight, Zara said, fishing her keys from her purse. I had a wonderful time. So did I. Vincent reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture tender and intimate. Can I see you this weekend? Maybe something casual like a walk through the park. I'd love that. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Zara didn't want to. She closed the distance between them and kissed him, soft and sweet, feeling his hand cup her cheek gently. It was the kind of kiss that promised more without demanding anything, and when they broke apart, she was smiling. Good night, Zara. Good night, Vincent. She watched him walk back to his car, waiting until he drove away before going inside. Her apartment felt different tonight, less like a prison she was hiding in and more like a home she was happy to return to. She changed into comfortable clothes and curled up on her couch with a book, but she couldn't concentrate on the words. Her mind kept returning to Vincent, to the way he'd looked at her like she was precious, to the quiet certainty in his voice when he'd promised to protect her. The next week fell into a pattern that felt both thrilling and comfortable. Vincent texted her every morning, nothing elaborate, just a simple good morning and a question about her plans for the day. They had lunched together twice, grabbing sandwiches and eating in the small park near the bookstore. On Saturday, they spent 3 hours walking through the botanical gardens, talking about everything and nothing, holding hands like teenagers. Zara felt herself falling, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of the landing. 2 weeks after their first date, Vincent invited her to his place for dinner. He'd been respectful of her pace, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, but Zara could feel the tension building between them. The chemistry that had been simmering beneath their conversations was ready to ignite, and she wanted it to. Vincent's penthouse apartment was exactly what she'd expected, and somehow more impressive in person. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the interior was decorated with sleek modern furniture, balanced by warm touches like thick rugs and artwork that actually looked chosen rather than just expensive. But what caught her attention was the bookshelf along one wall, crammed with hardcovers and paperbacks in no particular order. "You read," Zara said, moving toward the shelf with delight. "Constantly. It's my escape from the chaos of work." Vincent came up behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I'm not as well read as you, but I try." Zara scanned the titles, recognizing classics mixed with contemporary fiction, biographies next to poetry collections. "You have excellent taste. And you've actually read these, haven't you? They're not just for show. Every single one, some of them twice." Vincent wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "I meant what I said about appreciating what you do, Zara. Books are important to me." "You're important to me." She turned in his arms, tilting her face up to look at him. "You're important to me, too." This kiss was different from their first, deeper and more urgent. Zara ran her hands up Vincent's chest, feeling solid muscle under his shirt, while his hands tangled in her hair. They broke apart, breathing hard, and Vincent pressed his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he said, his voice rough. "I've been wanting you since the moment I saw you, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." "Yes," Zara breathed, and then he was kissing her again, walking her backward toward his bedroom. Later, lying in Vincent's bed with the city lights twinkling outside the window, Zara felt more content than she could remember being. Vincent's arm was wrapped around her, holding her close, and she could hear his heartbeat steady under her ear. "I have to tell you something," Vincent said quietly. "And I need you to understand that I'm not trying to control you or your life, but I've been having Marcus followed." Zara lifted her head to look at him. "What?" "I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on him, just to make sure he's staying away from you." Vincent met her gaze steadily. "He's been good so far. No attempts to contact you, no driving past your building, nothing. But I wanted to be certain, and I wanted you to know I'm serious about keeping you safe." Zara knew she should probably be concerned about this, but instead she felt that same sense of safety she'd experienced the first night. "That's either very sweet or very controlling, and I'm not sure which." "It's protective, which I know can look like controlling. But Zara, I'm not making decisions for you. I'm just making sure you have the information and security you need to make your own decisions." Vincent brushed his thumb across her cheek. "If you want me to stop, I will. But I sleep better knowing he's not a threat to you." "Keep doing it," Zara said. "At least for a little while longer. I like sleeping better too." The weeks turned into months, and Zara's life transformed in ways she'd never imagined. Vincent became her constant, the person she turned to when she was happy or sad, frustrated or excited. He continued to be thoughtful in small ways, showing up at the bookstore with coffee when she had early shifts, remembering details from conversations they'd had weeks ago, making space for her in his busy life without making her feel like an obligation. He introduced her to his world slowly, taking her to charity galas and business dinners, where she met other wealthy, powerful people who treated Vincent with obvious respect. Zara learned to navigate these events, discovering she enjoyed the challenge of holding her own in conversations with people who lived very different lives than hers. Vincent was always there, his hand on her back, or his attention returning to her, even in rooms full of people demanding his time. "You're a natural at this," he told her after a particularly elaborate fundraiser. They were back at his place, Zara barefoot and still in her evening gown, Vincent having lost his jacket and tie somewhere along the way. "Every person I introduced you to was charmed. I just talked to them like they were customers at the bookstore," Zara admitted. "Everyone has something they're passionate about. You just have to find it and ask questions. See? Natural." Vincent pulled her into his arms. "I have something to ask you, and I want you to think about it carefully before answering." Zara felt her heart rate pick up. Okay, move in with me. Vincent's hands settled on her hips. I know it's fast, but you're here most nights anyway, and I love having you in my space. I love waking up next to you. I want to make this official. Vincent. Zara took a breath, thinking about her cramped apartment and her second-hand furniture, her independence and her fear of rushing into things. But then she thought about how happy she was with him, how right it felt to be in his arms, how much she trusted him after months of him proving himself again and again. Yes, I'll move in with you. His smile was bright enough to light the room. Really, really, but I'm bringing my books. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. The move happened over a long weekend, with Vincent hiring movers for her furniture, most of which ended up in storage since his place was already fully furnished. But he made space for her belongings throughout the penthouse, clearing out half his closet and an entire bookshelf, moving his things aside so hers could fit naturally. This is your home now, too, he said, watching her arrange her books. I want you to feel like you belong here, not like you're a guest. Zara turned to look at him, this man who'd entered her life like a force of nature and stayed with steady patience. I do feel like I belong here, with you. Living together revealed new dimensions of Vincent. Zara discovered he was messy when he worked from home, spreading papers and laptops across every surface. He sang in the shower, badly and enthusiastically. He was grumpy before his first cup of coffee, but sweet after. He had nightmares sometimes, remnants from the years he'd spent stressed and struggling, and he'd wake up disoriented until she held him and reminded him where he was. She also saw how hard he worked, the hours he put in to keep his company running and growing. But he always made time for her, carving out evenings and weekends. Planning trips and dates like her happiness was as important as any business deal, which he assured her it was. 6 months after moving in together, Zara came home from work to find the penthouse lit with candles, a trail of rose petals leading from the door to the living room. Her heart was pounding as she followed them, finding Vincent standing by the windows in a suit, looking nervous and hopeful and devastating. Vincent, what is this? He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. This is me telling you that every day with you has been better than the one before. That you've made my life fuller and richer in ways I didn't know were possible. That I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. I love you too, Zara whispered, tears already forming in her eyes. I know we haven't been together long by traditional standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Vincent released one of her hands to pull a small box from his pocket, then lowered himself to one knee. Zara Johnson, will you marry me? The ring was beautiful, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the candlelight and sparkled like captured stars. But Zara barely saw it because she was focused on Vincent's face, on the vulnerability and love she saw there. Yes, she said, pulling him to his feet so she could kiss him. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both smiling so wide their faces hurt, Vincent swept her into his arms and spun her around, her laughter echoing through their home. They planned the wedding for the following spring, wanting enough time to do it right without waiting so long they drove themselves crazy. Zara's parents flew in to meet Vincent officially, and her mother cried happy tears when she saw how he looked at her daughter. This is the right one, her mother said later, helping Zara address invitations. He sees you, really sees you and values you. He does, Zara agreed. He saved me in more ways than one. The wedding took place in a garden, surrounded by flowers and friends and family. Emma was her maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Vincent's best man was his business partner, a man named Thomas who gave a speech about how Vincent had been insufferable about Zara from their first date, talking about her constantly until everyone at the office knew her life story. "I've never seen him like this," Thomas said, raising his glass. "And I've never seen him happier." To Vincent and Zara. To Vincent and Zara, the room echoed. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, wandering through vineyards and historic cities, eating too much pasta and drinking wine while the sun set over ancient hills. They talked about the future, about the life they wanted to build together. Vincent wanted children eventually, 2 or 3 if they were lucky. Zara wanted to keep working at the bookstore, at least for now, because it still brought her joy. "Whatever you want," Vincent said, his arms around her on the balcony of their hotel room. "As long as I have you, I have everything." When they returned home, life settled into a new rhythm. Married life suited them, the commitment adding a depth to their relationship that Zara hadn't expected. She felt more secure, more confident, more herself than ever before. Vincent continued to support her dreams, even encouraging her when she mentioned wanting to write her own book someday. "You have stories to tell," he said. "You should tell them." A year into their marriage, Zara found out she was pregnant. She'd been feeling off for a few weeks, tired and nauseous, before Emma had suggested she take a test. Now she stood in their bathroom, holding the positive result, emotions swirling through her. Vincent came home to find her sitting on the couch, the test in her hand. "Zara, what's wrong?" He was beside her immediately, his hand on her knee. "Nothing's wrong. I'm pregnant." She looked up at him, trying to gauge his reaction. "We're going to have a baby." His face went through several expressions before landing on pure joy. He let out a whoop and picked her up, spinning her carefully before setting her back down and dropping to his knees to press his face against her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I'm your dad and I already love you so much." Zara ran her hands through his hair, overwhelmed with love for this man who'd walked into her life and changed everything. "You're going to be an amazing father." "I'm going to try." He looked up at her. "Are you happy? Is this what you want?" "I'm terrified and excited and so happy," Zara said honestly. "This is exactly what I want." The pregnancy was smooth, and Vincent was attentive to the point of being comically overprotective. He researched everything, from the best prenatal vitamins to the safest cribs, and he talked to her stomach every night, telling their baby about his day and promising adventures when they were born. Zara documented it all with photos and journal entries, wanting to remember every moment. They found out they were having a girl, and Vincent cried when he saw the ultrasound. "A daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're having a daughter." They painted the nursery together, a soft lavender with white clouds on the ceiling. Vincent assembled furniture while Zara organized tiny clothes and stuffed animals. Her parents visited and brought family heirlooms. Vincent's father came from Chicago, a weathered man with kind eyes who held Zara's hands and told her he was grateful his son had found her. The baby arrived on a cool autumn morning, almost exactly 2 years after Zara had first met Vincent. The labor was long and exhausting, but Vincent never left her side, holding her hand and wiping her forehead and telling her how strong she was. When their daughter finally arrived, perfect and screaming and beautiful, he cut the cord with shaking hands and then stood there staring like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "She's here," he said unnecessarily, tears streaming down his face. "Our daughter is here." They named her Violet Rose, after the flower he'd brought on their first date and the last initial he'd wanted her to have. Violet had Vincent's gray eyes and Zara's dark hair, and she was immediately the center of their universe. Vincent threw himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He learned to change diapers and give baths, to soothe her when she cried and make her laugh with silly faces. He rearranged his schedule to be home more, bringing work home so he could be present for the small moments. Zara watched him rock their daughter to sleep and fell in love with him all over again. "You were right," she told him one night, both of them exhausted and happy in their bed while Violet slept in her nursery. "You are an amazing father." "I have an amazing family," Vincent replied, pulling her close. "Everything I have, everything I've built, it all means more because I get to share it with you." As Violet grew, Zara returned to work part-time, finding a balance between her career and motherhood that felt right. Vincent's company continued to thrive, but he'd learned to delegate more, to trust his team so he could prioritize his family. They took vacations together, the three of them exploring the world, making memories. When Violet was 3, Zara discovered she was pregnant again, this time with a boy they would name Victor, keeping with the theme. Vincent was thrilled at the idea of a son, though he assured Zara he would have been just as happy with another girl. "I just want healthy and happy," he said, his hand on her growing belly. "Everything else is bonus." Victor arrived without complications, a calm baby who seemed content to observe the world around him. Violet was fascinated by her little brother, wanting to help with everything from feeding to diaper changes. Their penthouse, once so elegant and adult, was now filled with toys and laughter and the beautiful chaos of young children. On their 5th anniversary, Vincent surprised Zara with a weekend away, just the two of them while her parents watched the kids. They returned to Marcella's, the restaurant where they'd had their first date, and sat in the same corner booth. "You remember that night?" Vincent asked, reaching across the table to take her hand, his thumb brushing over her wedding ring. "I remember thinking you were too good to be true," Zara said. "I remember feeling safe for the first time in months. I remember thinking I'd met someone special and hoping I wouldn't mess it up." Vincent smiled. "Best decision I ever made asking you to dinner. Best decision I ever made saying yes." They'd come so far from that scared woman outside the bookstore and the man who'd stopped to help her. They'd built a life together, a family, a love that deepened with every passing day. Marcus was a distant memory, though Zara occasionally thought about how different her life might have been if Vincent hadn't been there that night. But he had been there, and that had made all the difference. "I have something for you," Vincent said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Zara opened it to find a deed. She scanned the legal language, then looked up at him in confusion. "What is this?" "Hemingway's Corner. I bought it for you." Vincent leaned forward. "The owner was ready to retire, and I thought instead of just preserving it, why not make it yours? You can run it however you want, expand it, turn it into your dream. I just want to give you the freedom to make it whatever you envision." "Vincent, this is too much." But even as she said it, Zara felt excitement building. Her own bookstore, the chance to create something entirely hers. "It's not too much. It's exactly right." He squeezed her hand. "You've given me everything, Zara. Let me give you this." She took ownership of Hemingway's Corner and poured her energy into making it special. She expanded the children's section, started a book club, brought in local authors for readings. Emma became her assistant manager, and together they transformed the store into a true community gathering place. Vincent supported her completely, watching the kids when she needed to work late, offering business advice when she asked for it, celebrating every success like it was his own. The years passed in a blur of happiness. Violet started school, curious and bright and social like her mother. Victor was quieter but thoughtful, always building things and taking them apart to see how they worked. They spent summers at a lake house Vincent bought, winters skiing in Colorado, weekends at home just being together. Zara published her first book when Violet was 7, a novel she'd written in stolen moments between running the store and raising her children. It wasn't a bestseller, but it was well reviewed, and holding the finished copy in her hands was one of the proudest moments of her life. Vincent threw her a launch party, inviting everyone they knew, and gave a speech about how talented and determined his wife was. "She's accomplished everything she set out to do," he said, his arm around her waist. "And she's done it while being an incredible mother, partner, and friend. I'm in awe of her every single day." On their 10th anniversary, they renewed their vows in the same garden where they'd gotten married, surrounded by their children and loved ones. Violet and Victor stood beside them as they promised again to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. "10 years ago, you saved me," Zara said in her vows, her voice steady even as tears ran down her face. "You made me feel safe when I'd forgotten what that felt like. You showed me what real love looks like, patient and kind and steadfast. Every day with you has been a gift, and I can't wait for all the days still to come." Vincent's vows were equally emotional, his voice breaking as he talked about the life they'd built and the woman she'd become. "You were always strong," he said. "I just had the privilege of being there when you found your strength again. Loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life, and I promise to keep choosing you every single day for as long as I live." They kissed while their children cheered and their friends applauded, and Zara felt complete in a way she'd never imagined possible back when she was scared and alone, dealing with an ex who wouldn't let go. Looking back, she could trace the trajectory of her life to that one night, standing outside the bookstore with her hands trembling, wondering what to do. Vincent had appeared like an answer to a prayer she hadn't known she was saying, and he'd delivered on every promise he'd made. He'd handled her ex with the quiet certainty she'd needed. He'd made her feel safe in ways both physical and emotional. He'd loved her with an intensity that never wavered, even when life got hard or complicated. They'd built something real and lasting, a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Their children were growing up watching what healthy love looked like, learning that relationships should make you feel cherished and secure. Zara ran a successful business, had published multiple books, and still found time to be present for her family. Vincent had continued to grow his company while also being an engaged father and devoted husband. It wasn't always perfect. They had disagreements and stressful moments, days when the demands of their lives felt overwhelming. But they faced everything together, communicating and compromising and always coming back to the foundation of love they'd built. One evening when Violet was 13 and Victor was 10, Zara found Vincent on their balcony, looking out at the city lights. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just reflecting on how lucky I am," Vincent said, turning to pull her into his arms properly. "When I think about that night I met you, how easily I could have driven past without stopping, it terrifies me. My whole life could have been different." "Mine too," Zara said. "I could have told you I was fine and gone home to deal with Marcus alone. I almost did, but something made me trust you. I'm glad you did. I'm glad I stopped. I'm glad we took a chance on each other." Vincent kissed her forehead. "You're still the best thing that ever happened to me, Zara. After all these years, that hasn't changed. You're my best thing too," she said. "My safe place. My home." They stood there together as the city glowed below them, two people who'd found each other in a moment of need and transformed it into a lifetime of love. Their story had started with fear and uncertainty, but it had become something beautiful and strong, a testament to what could happen when you let the right person in. Inside, they could hear their children laughing at something on television, the sounds of family and normalcy. Outside, The world continued its chaos and noise. But here, in Vincent's arms, with the life they'd built surrounding them, Zara felt nothing but peace. She'd been looking for safety that night outside the bookstore, and she'd found it. But she'd also found so much more: love, partnership, adventure, family, herself. Vincent had promised to handle her ex, and he had. But he'd also handled her heart with care, her dreams with respect, her fears with understanding. Sometimes the best love stories started with the simplest of promises, delivered with quiet certainty by someone who meant every word. And sometimes those promises led to happily ever after. Years continued to flow by in a sweet rhythm. When Violet turned 16, she started working part-time at Hemingway's corner, discovering her mother's love of books and developing her own passion for storytelling. Victor, at 13, was already talking about studying architecture like his grandfather had studied construction, wanting to build things that would last. Zara and Vincent watched their children grow with pride, an occasional bittersweet awareness that time was moving too fast. But they'd learned to savor the moments, to be present for the small things that made up a life well lived. Vincent eventually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Voss Enterprises, letting his carefully chosen successors take over while he focused on philanthropic work and spending time with his family. He and Zara started a foundation that provided resources for domestic violence survivors, helping people who'd been in situations like hers find safety and support. "You turned the worst part of your life into something that helps others," Vincent said at the foundation's 5th anniversary gala. "That's who you are, Zara. You take broken things and make them beautiful." On their 20th anniversary, they returned to Italy, just the two of them, walking the same streets they'd explored on their honeymoon. They were older now, with silver threading through Vincent's dark hair and laugh lines around Zara's eyes, but the love between them had only grown richer. "Would you do it all again?" Vincent asked as they sat at a cafe, watching the world go by. "Knowing everything that would happen, all the ups and downs, would you still say yes to dinner that night?" Zara reached across the table and took his hand, the gesture as natural as breathing after 20 years of marriage. Without hesitation. "You're still the best decision I ever made, Vincent Voss. Every single day, you're the best decision." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Same, Zara, always the same." They'd started with a moment of fear transformed by kindness. They'd built it into a lifetime of love, partnership, family, and joy. And when Zara thought back to that scared woman outside the bookstore, waiting for a stranger to rescue her, she smiled at how much she'd underestimated what was about to happen. Vincent hadn't just rescued her from Marcus. He'd shown her what she was capable of, what love should look like, what life could be when you found the right person to share it with. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. It was real and hard-won and precious. And it all started with 5 simple words, delivered with quiet confidence by a man who meant them. "I'll handle your ex." But what he'd really been saying, what Zara had heard underneath those words was, "I've got you. You're not alone anymore. I'm here and I'm staying." And he had stayed. Through everything, through decades and challenges and beautiful ordinary moments, Vincent had stayed. They'd built their happily ever after one day at a time, one choice at a time, one promise at a time. It was exactly the kind of love story Zara had always loved reading about in her bookstore, except this one was real, and it was hers, and it was everything.